In this video, we're going to be breaking down the latest stand-up special from Mark Simmons. We're going to share what was good, what is bad, what is unique, and is it successful? Let's go. Now, just before recording this video, we've just been confirmed to film and produce Mark's next stand-up special for his current tour. So we're going to review his previous special with that in mind and bring our suggestions forward for what we like, what we might keep, and what we might do differently. Let's go. If you're new here, my name's David and I run Affinity Media. We specialize in producing stand-up comedy specials and comedy content online to help grow your audience and sell more tickets. Now, first up, Mark is genuinely one of my absolute favorite comics. I've been listening to his podcast for years, and it's been really interesting to learn all of the subtle and nuanced details of writing comedy, which has helped us approach how we film comedy specials. So, Mark's previous special, Quip Off the Mark, has had 450,000 views. That puts him in the top 1% of YouTube videos all around, and easily in the top 1% of all comedy specials on YouTube. So, let's have a look at how this was filmed before we give our approach. Our mid to wide shot is dead center and has Mark addressing the room with the front row of the audience in the lower third of the screen. We then have this close, or as we would call it, cowboy shot, with the top half being shown. This is slightly off-center, and if it was me, I would have maybe switched those two camera angles around. It's harder to spot a wide angle being a few degrees off-center than it is a close-up. Now, the main reason for this is to keep the eye line of the comic facing the viewer through the screen. We then have this slash shot on the side. There's a slight difference in the colors here, suggesting it might be a different camera, and we can see that from the slightly difference in the green on the top and the color in the background. It's always hard to tell without seeing the raw footage, but I assume the editor has done a great job here of matching these cameras as close as possible. Now, we do have some very, very slight camera shakes, and absolutely not the end of the world, and in some cases it actually plays into the special, especially at high energy moments. Even when you have heavier duty tripods, you can still get a little bit of rumble and wobble through the floors when you have big crowd laughter. Now, we have been caught out with this before, and personally we would always rather avoid it, so we now go with crazy heavy duty tripods, even if it's complete overkill and we're running lighter setups. Now, let's get on to the exciting part, which is the comedy. I absolutely love Mark's style and his delivery with these one-liners.
You probably think I'm a chilled out sort of guy, but I recently got very angry about a self-portrait. Yeah, that wasn't like me.
He's got the perfect cadence of quick fire and then giving space for the audience reactions before teeing up the next joke. And in this special, he also has some physical comedy elements which work really well. Now, I really love that we've got this symmetrical shot with the props either side. The fact that we can see them every time we cut back to this angle brings us back into this mindset of what next, whereas the close-ups can really pull you into a joke. When you really get into the psychology of the edit, this is where the angles and editing really come into their own to help guide the viewer through the special. Editing can help massively regardless of the comic, and each cut should always be intentional. So would we have done anything differently, and what will we be taking into Mark's next special? Well, I've got a few things. Now, the first thing is audio. I was chatting to Mark about this on our pre-production call for the next special last week. There are some really small, and I mean tiny, tiny moments, more towards the end of the show, where we have a tiny little bit of peaking or distortion from the mic. Now, I assume this is coming from the lav mic that Mark is wearing, and we would run lav mics, but we only have these as a backup, and we always have a dedicated sound engineer who intercepts the feed from the vocal mic before it reaches the in-house sound engineer. This gives us full control over the quality of the recording and the full mixing and mastering for the special itself. Mark then has some slight physical comedy moments in the show where we actually use the props that I mentioned earlier, and there's a chance that on the day we'll probably grab some separate takes of just these parts of his next show. So we'll get some super close detailed shots just so that we have the option in the edit. You've got to remember that just because the audience can see it clearly in the room, it doesn't mean the audience can see it clearly through the screen. You therefore have to work a little bit harder to kind of explicitly show it on camera. Now, one thing I'd absolutely love to do is have a slightly closer up angle to Mark. It's very rare that comedy specials have an angle anything closer than the cowboy shot, but Mark has a unique style with a tiny, nuanced kind of facial expressions, and these are often key in his one-liners. Now, most one-liners are obviously wordplay, so the tiny enunciations, pauses, and facial expressions that require a sense of doubt, excitement, confidence, whatever it may be, they need to be seen. As an example, one signature thing that I love about Mark is some of his punchlines being delivered almost as a question. So you have this upward inflection at the end, and then Mark often looks around the room or kind of scans his eyes.
Went to a lecture about counterfeit money, can't remember much, they told us not to make notes.
This, for me, is what makes the punchline visually, and we want to capture these moments in the special. Again, these are the 1% differences that are needed to really make a joke land on screen. Now, when I briefly chatted to Mark last week for our pre-production, he was more or less happy for us to just do our thing. So one thing I'm really excited to try is some side lighting in the wings. We've not necessarily done this before on previous productions, but when you look at Netflix specials that we've reviewed previously on this channel, like Mark Norman, Shane Gillis specials, you see that they have some really well thought out, beautifully designed and intended lighting beyond the stage. This is where they're lighting things at side of stage, maybe it's the curtain drapes at the side of stage, as well as the actual rigging and scaffolds that are in the wings. Now, these don't distract, but instead actually add focus to the comic as they help produce this really soft bokeh effect that you see behind the comic. So what will the finished project look like? Well, we're going to be going all out for this one and supplying Mark with our complete done-for-you package, meaning that we produce the full special, we do a 60 to 90 second Netflix-style trailer, as many social media clips as we can possibly muster from all of the footage, photography, thumbnail design for Mark's YouTube video, and what's better, we'll be producing a full behind the scenes of the day so you can see exactly what goes in to filming these specials and how we produce them. If that sounds good, make sure you follow so you don't miss it, and if you're a comic looking to produce your next comedy stand-up special, drop us a message or visit our website to get a quote.